It is 10 o'clock, and this is Lancaster Woodturners Weekly Coffee Hour number 151 for May 11th, 2023. I see 29 on screen and more people clicking in as we go. It's a show and tell. Use raise hand if you want to show us stuff. We'd like to see especially from people who haven't shown us anything lately. Before we get started, though, announcements. This Saturday is the auction in Mannheim. The Barry McFarland auction. He's the fellow who turned blanks for baseball bats for Louisville Sluggers, and he's retiring and selling everything, which will mean logging equipment, an awful lot of wood. I've been to auctions there before, and they're always terrific. So Ziegler and I are planning on going up on Saturday. Saturday is also Lancaster Open Shop, which is at our club space in New Holland. And I also got an announcement the other day from AAW. They are, in fact, having a virtual component to the symposium. And you can register for that for $99 for an individual, which I've done already. But then I also saw they even are offering significant discounts for group registrations of 5 or 10 people. And as near as I can tell, that means you can log in from your own home. It doesn't mean it has to be 5 or 10 people in one place watching one screen. And there's significant discounts for that, which I think is meant to entice clubs who are far from Louisville to offer packages to their members. I just wish they'd announced it a little earlier, because we don't have a meeting between now and then where we can actually sell that. So it's a little bit late to do us any good. But any of you guys can, or we could even do that right here. We could put together a group of 5 or a group of 10 and buy the package deal. If there's interest in that. I guess I really want to do is see what you all think about them offering the virtual component to the symposium. I myself think it's a terrific idea, but I'd like to hear from others on the point. No?
Yeah, I really liked the last time they did it. I used it and I really enjoyed it. Plus, they were available afterwards for a month or 2 months or something. So it was nice to be able to go see the demonstrations at my own pace.
Yeah, I understand they're going to have like 2 demo rooms fully loaded with video equipment, and they're planning to, I think, building on the experiment that we did last year at Mid-Atlantic, they're going to try and do some, homegrown TV from around the site. They go to the trade show, go to the instant gallery, talk to people in the corridors. I don't know how well that's going to go, but I have high hopes for it going well. And I think if the audience asking good questions can help it, I'll be doing that. Although I don't even know if it's going to be webinars or Zoom or exactly what their format is or what the possibilities are for interaction. So I don't know. I guess we'll find out. I'm going to give it the best shot I can to help it go. Anyway, I think it's actually the way of the future for National Symposia is a very strong virtual component. I think that's the only way you're going to bring in people like Kai, just for example. Anybody who's unable or unwilling to go to Louisville for a few days in June. I'm unwilling because of the expense, frankly. Louisville's within my driving range, but it's not within my hotel budget. And by the time I've paid for hotel and food and registration and then what I'm going to spend in the trade show, it's probably a $2,000 weekend. And I'm retired. I don't really have too many $2,000 weekends in me anymore. Anybody else on this? How many of you might want to do the virtual thing? Let's have a show of hands. I know I'm gonna. I see.
I assume you got the mailer, John, because the mailer actually lists all the demonstrators they're going to have on virtual.
Yeah. What are the
I
dates?
didn't get the mailer, but it is on the website.
What are the dates, please?
First weekend in June.
Yeah, June 2, 3, 4.
Thank you.
Friday, Saturday, Sunday. The menu of the available demonstrations looks pretty rich. There's only a fraction of them that actually interest me personally, but I'll probably have the TV on or the computer on wherever I am. So I'd really, let me see. I saw at least 6 or 8 on screen who were planning to sign up for that. Could I see that again? I would really like to know. It would help me out a lot just to think about this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, That's a significant part of this group. 12, 13 people on this screen out of 33. More than a third. Very good, very interesting.
I'm driving to Louisville.
Say it again.
I'm driving
You're
to
in a drive.
Louisville. I've got somebody carpool. Emiliano Archibald come to visit. We're gonna carpool and share a room.
Well, you're the dudes who are doing the thing with Richard Raffin. The
Yeah.
four-way.
Well, I am.
Emilio's part of that.
No, Emiliano's not part of that.
Ah,
It's Tomislav Tomasek from Croatia and Sam Angelo.
how is that going?
It's going good. It seems to be very well
Great.
received.
You
Getting good
still plan
feedback.
to do the panel interview we talked about afterward?
Yeah, we need to nail down some dates, and I'll get back with you on that. And a
Okay,
How long's the
well-
drive, Mike?
It's about seven and a half hours, I think. But Emiliano's got to get up there early on Thursday, so it'll be a 2-day drive for us. So we'll have time to stop, and if we see something we want to check out, we'll have time to do it.
How many of you are actually on the screen since we polled for how many are going to go virtually? How many others are going to go to the actually take yourself to Louisville besides Mike? Let's have a show of hands of that so I can see what that looks like in this group. I don't see anybody else. Is that a mistake? Huh. That's very interesting.
That's to be predicted, right? I mean, I think that's what we're gonna see in the future. So,
I think I think that AAW in particular is struggling hard with how to resolve this. And I think that they have a huge amount of financial risk, and they have to plan these things years ahead in order to find and book space. So it means they're committed ahead. Even if situation changes as it did in COVID, they're still committed to convention halls and deposits and enormous fees. So it's a highly risky proposition.
John,
Can I throw in something that I think that member demographics, we're all advancing in age. I did Louisville in 06. That was my first symposium, and I can drive Louisville in about 9 to 10 hours, I guess. But like you said earlier, John, it's a $2,000 weekend, and with Canadian exchange, it's even more. And I can't sit in the car now for 10 hours. When that was 16 years ago? No. Anyway.
Yeah, I can sit in the car to get there, but I can't sit in the demos. I just can't do that much demo. So when I get there, I probably would attend in person fewer demos than I'm going to attend on video. Because
the other problem, I think, John, you referred to this, or Mid-Atlantic has this struggle too. I call it a struggle, and I'm not part of Mid-Atlantic, but when they make a contract with a facility and guarantee a certain amount of rooms, that means it's expensive for us attending. We can't go down to the local motel. And so I would love to go to this one, but I'm not going to pay to stay in the hotels like that. So.
Well, Mid-Atlantic has decided not to have a virtual component like this year after our experiment last year.
National.
They didn't explain that decision. They just said we just didn't want to do it anymore. So, okay, that's okay. I don't want to do it anymore either, frankly. I learned a lot last year. I learned, a main thing I learned is I can't do that sort of thing anymore. And I also learned that the real problem in trying to do anything like that is your internet connection. We could not establish and maintain the stable connection in the various places where we wanted to, despite a considerable investment in equipment to do that. So I think that AAW can resolve that in the convention hall they're going to, because big convention halls can provide stable connections, provided you're willing to pay a few $1,000. We weren't willing to go that far. Anybody else on this? I think it's a good topic. Is anybody planning to take their local club to try and get a group of 4 or 5 or a group of 5 for the discount ticket? Yeah, I think that's
Try to arrange something with this
John, are you going to try to arrange something with this group?
I don't think I am, because I bought an individual ticket, but I would encourage anybody who wants to try and do it. And if I can be a clearinghouse for that or to connect people, sure, I'm willing to do that. I regret that. See, they face a terrible contradiction. They can't announce. They don't want to announce the virtual thing early on because they want to seduce as many people as possible to paying full boat and attending in person. So they hold off the announcement. Well, that made it too. We don't have a club meeting between now and then, so we can't deal with it with our club members. If we'd known about it a month ago, we could have. Just the way it is.
And they're getting creative with some of their enticements. One I had one of the club's presidents was seeing if they could get 10 people to get that group discount, and I was the only one who responded. They had a deal that if the president went, or maybe it was just a club officer, somebody could go register with them and get 50% off on the registration. And he said, "Hey, I got a deal for you."
That would be like a 10 person
That's a significant savings.
on the registration. You mean
on
for attending? Yeah. It's the registration is actually the least of it. The hotel, the food, the barbecue, and the trade show is the significant part of the bill.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't resist the candy store or the trade show. Buying all kinds of gear I don't need.
Do those vendors pay a percentage to the organization for sales?
No,
I believe not.
They pay booth rental.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, booth rental is a flat rate. It's not.
And I know I talked to one vendor that was disappointed in the attendance at Chattanooga, and then he loses like 5 days of productivity of manufacturing stuff when he goes to one of these things. He says, "I just can't afford to go."
When I was in the book business, I found that going to a 3-day weekend show really was 10 days of work. Besides the show, the prep, the getting there, the setting up, the breakdown, the getting home, the cleanup afterward, the returning stock to inventory, cleaning up the credit card stuff, running down details, getting stuff shipped out that we didn't have with us. It was horrendously huge effort for fairly small return when you put the return against the amount of time I had to put to it. And I think that's true for any vendor. Mike, you've staffed booths at these things with vendors. You probably have some insight on that as well.
Yeah, and
I think there's a second problem, John, and that is I learn as much from these 1 hour a week coffee hours as I do by going to a convention. So the only real thing I'm looking at as a convention is all the equipment you can buy. And yeah, you can get an interaction, but you've had some pretty good demonstrators on here where you can ask questions too. So this is like once a week we do a virtual symposium,
And Doug, the other thing is I learn a lot about tools from this group too. So I don't need to go to a vendor, and I learn also sources for tools. So sorry, Doug Thompson, but
I know
One of the things too is when you go to the symposiums, it's kind of like drinking water out of a fire hose. When you get back home, you can't remember hardly half of what was there. And this forum, you get a little bit every week. Well, you get a chance to try it and talk about it the following week, whether it's acceptable or not. But symposium, you don't have that opportunity because it's just in one ear and out the other.
I know. I went to the Pittsburgh symposium and I volunteered there. And I actually volunteered to help the demonstrators. And I think I learned more about technique and holding the tools in the correct position and stuff just from standing behind the actual demonstrator and watching how they manipulated their tools. It was spectacular for me to go and just watch.
I've always found that too. If I find the best way to participate in the symposiums is to volunteer and get involved, and you get up close and personal that way in a way you don't do as just a paying customer. That's for sure.
I think many of us have shifted to going to the regional symposiums, and you supplement that with IRDs in your club activities, and you're pretty much there.
I think the regional symposiums are probably the best bargain out there. Unfortunately, here in North Georgia, we had two of them, one in the spring and one in the fall. Now, they were at a point where I still had to rent a hotel, but instead of $175 hotel, you could get a $70 hotel, and it was fairly close driving distance. But since then, both of those have fallen by the wayside. Mostly, one of them, mostly because it was so much work for Nick Cook ran one of them, and I think he just got tired of the work. And then our club had a hard time finding a symposium director. Even they just couldn't entice anybody to take over the job. So after COVID, that was pretty much it.
You have
amount of
another
work
one in
that's
Florida,
out
right,
there,
Mike?
What's that?
There's another one in Florida as well.
Well, there's one in Florida, there's one in Tennessee. I mean, there's a bunch of them. There's a bunch of them around. The one thing about the symposium, the regional ones, is typically they seem to have a lot of times more food services at reasonable prices, and the hotels are in a market where you can find, a Red Roof Inn or a Comfort Inn or something much more reasonable than typically we see at the national symposiums, where sometimes the rooms run $200-$250 in some instances.
Well, the other thing is, at a regional, you're much more likely to be friends with somebody who lives in that town. I mean, I have 2 guest rooms, and for Mid-Atlantic, I usually have 2 guests.
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment what you get out of a symposium. The last symposium I went to in Germany, I didn't spend much time watching the main demonstrations. I spent more time talking to people I met during the symposium. So it was more kind of social interaction and speaking to people who were demonstrating at the vendors' stalls, because they normally had a small group around them. You could talk to them, ask questions, and I had some nice, interesting conversation about techniques and tools with them. So that was the more interesting thing than watching the main demonstrations, because if you want to learn something from the main demonstrators, it's better to watch it on video and watch it again if you don't catch certain things. And there isn't much possibility to ask questions anyway in this situation. So I think the personal interaction is the more interesting thing for me, at least.
And I think what I observed, my first 1 or 2 symposiums, it was all about the information, watching the demonstrations. But after about a couple of them, the interactions became more important because you knew more people, you didn't see some of them that often, and that component seemed to grow in comparison to watching the demonstrators as the years went on.
Yeah, that's right. And also you get better in wood turning, of course, and so other things are more important maybe.
Yes.
Last year's Mid-Atlantic, the real neat part was I got to meet a lot of you guys who I've only seen on Zoom, and we had face-to-face at that one. So that was kind of very cool to me to run into guys who I've seen on Zoom, but not in person. So.
Well, the other thing I found the last time I went to a national, there's 2 or 3 of the demos that I really wanted to attend were very, very popular. And so I found myself near the back of the room sitting on the floor. Well, I don't really sit on the floor real well anymore, or I could sit on the floor, but I can't get up again. So that's another level of deterrent. It's physically too taxing for a geezer like me to cope with the amount of walking around you have to do in a convention center, a big hotel convention center complex. You can walk for miles getting from one place to the other. And I don't really have that in me anymore.
At working a booth, I thought it'd be, a low cost way to visit a symposium, but I found working a booth, I missed out on all the I had a lot of interaction, but I missed out on a lot of opportunities because I was confined to a booth, and standing on your feet for 8 to 10 hours a day for 3 days, I found I just can't handle that.
Yeah.
That's the end of that for me.
And usually in a room that's refrigerated. I've done a number of conventions for other purposes, and boy, I always froze my butt off in the exhibition hall. So,
Anybody else?
Ken, you mentioned, I think it was you mentioned that you learned looking over the shoulder of guys you were assisting in a symposium. I thought of the Mid-Atlantic. I was videotaping the competition at the end, you know, in the last dinner. I think I may have learned some not so good techniques for hollowing out a bowl very fast because I was trying to emulate them, and I go, this is really dangerous stuff. So.
Well, those are years of experience as opposed to no experience.
Yeah, well, they really chiseled it out, I'll tell you.
Well, while
That's
we're
one of
talking
the-
about, go ahead,
Go
Doug.
ahead. I was
No,
just
you
saying,
go.
well, it's one of the things about those symposiums. You guys are touching on a lot of issues, because even trade shows or anything like that, even if you're going to your own trade show, there's a hell of a lot of backup work and everything like that for the vendors. And on the other hand, the smaller Atlantic, I've never been to the major, the big AAW one, but the smaller regional symposiums don't need such a big venue because they're not expecting such a big crowd, which means their costs can be brought down in line with it, and not just as travel distance, but the costs also comes down that way. So anyway.
Well, the thing is, I remember back in the earlier days, we used to have symposiums at schools and colleges instead of huge convention centers, and it was a whole lot cheaper and a whole lot more informal. And when I look at the numbers that attended Mid-Atlantic, it was about 200 people there. That we used to have 300, 400, 500, 600 at a college in a college shop. I'm talking 30 years ago, but I think those kinds of venues are still available in some parts of the country. And this trend that we have to be in a big convention hotel, I'm not sure it's correct. I don't know. I guess I don't know enough about it. I'm not sure it's being looked at that way either. So.
John, you're right on target when you commented on that. For Florida, we had a beautiful facility available. It was a Baptist retreat on a beautiful lake, a big stone fireplace and meeting hall and cafeteria. And then as the years rolled by, they went to the convention center. And it's just like you said, the attendance really dropped off. And it was because of expense and the lack of local restaurants and motels. So that's the same history that you commented on earlier. And I've watched it evolve into that, to where the people get older, the prices go up, and the attendance goes down. So you're right on target, John.
Would it be a possibility to have what you would call woodturner retreats? Like a whole weekend, you rent a camping facility or whatever and say, hey, we're going to have a retreat. A couple guys are going to show a little bit of what they do, and you can meet and talk. Would that be a possibility?
Why don't you check it out, Jim? Why don't you try to organize one and report back to us?
Like I said to John last week, I'd rather be turning than doing that. So.
Well, there's your problem right there.
Is it that nobody wants to plan it, right? Is that the deal?
Nobody wants to be responsible. Getting volunteers is one thing. Getting a volunteer leader for a big event is a challenge. I mean, I see that in my other volunteer activities. It's a challenge. People don't want to step up to be a leader.
Yeah, I know. When one of the club guys, I believe it was Ron Sheehan, was asking for help to move all the lathes in and stuff. Well, that's a major chunk of work the day before with a lot of guys. And I thought, holy cow, that's a lot of work setting up for Mid-Atlantic. It was. So.
It was a huge amount of work, and it's much more. I've worked on the lathe setup crew twice, and 2 times I've seen somebody almost seriously injured. Injured a little bit, and it could have been a whole hell of a lot worse. It's just a luck of the draw. The truth is, geezers like us are just not the right guys to be moving 800-pound lathes around. And in our case, in our club case, that lathe has to come down from a mezzanine, while a forklift has to snake through a very busy workshop and tweezle that thing off of the down from the mezzanine to the ground floor. Very, very scary stuff.
And what Ron didn't mention about the last time is, oh, by the way, the crew dropped one of the lathes completely off the back of the truck, when it was halfway down because we hadn't blocked it right. So it was like that type of thing. As you said, John, that's not for 80-year-old people to be doing. You need to have a. I volunteered for that work because it was my lathe that they were using, and I wanted to make sure my lathe ended up in the right place and not on the floor. Yeah, but anyway.
Yeah, the maker spaces, they're not, I'm not acquainted with them firsthand. Are they possibilities for regional or local club not demo? I know some of you clubs meet there, but I mean to open up larger, or are they not big enough and not set up right?
The two I've seen are not big enough.
Okay.
Yeah, ours is definitely not big enough for something like that.
Plus, there's a lot going on in there. It's not just wood turning. There's CNC machines and every other thing that's going on in a makerspace. Electronics benches.
Our makerspace has 33,000 square feet, and with a dedicated welding facility, the machining, as John mentioned, plus it has, laser setups, all types of 3D printing, and a large open area besides the woods facility. Could it handle 200 people easily?
There you go. And you guys used to meet in a high school shop that I recollect that could have handled about 100 people if you really wanted to do a thing in there too.
Right. Yeah, it would be in our facility. It would be difficult, probably to have more than 2 demonstrations at a time, but it could be done.
I just wanted to comment on organizing your own well, not symposium, wood turning meeting. We are a group of 8 people who organize Zoom meetings in Germany, and we decided to come together this year for the first time in one place and do a week of wood turning and some planning as well for our future Zoom meetings. So that will be an interesting thing. We have our big symposiums, or well, maybe it's not that big, but we have a biennial symposium in Germany, and this year there is no symposium, so we decided to come together and do this. And we will meet at a private workshop, and we will have 1 big lathe, and there are another 2 small lathes in this place, and then we will have maybe 2 more small lathes that people bring along. So there will be plenty of lathes, and people will bring tools and chucks and stuff like that. And we planned that via Zoom because we are spread all over Germany, and we have kind of a plan what we are going to turn and what we are going to demonstrate. And we have another thing that we pre-arranged. We watched this Women in Turning project in the United States that the AAW offers. And we decided maybe we could have something like this, not just for women, for everybody in Germany as well. So we split the 8 people who will meet this year in 2 groups, and we prepared 2 little projects or things that just to make the experience how cooperation works, and then we will take the finished result to our meeting in summer and discuss how we got there and whether it's worth organizing that for a bigger group of wood turners in Germany. So that's something you could always do, organize yourself a small meeting with not so many people, but maybe experienced wood turners who want to exchange ideas and knowledge. And I'm looking forward to this. And once we've had the meeting, if you're interested, I can give a little report about what we did and what it was like.
Of course, we will want a little report. And I'm also interested that you're not having a national symposium this year. Do you have them every other year, or what do you do?
Yeah, we have them every other year. So it's every 2 years there is a symposium, and it's different from the kind of symposium you have in the United States. The organization of wood turners in Germany is different. We don't have clubs really. We have an internet forum where woodturners exchange ideas, and then out of this internet forum, the idea developed that woodturners living in one area wanted to meet each other. So we have kind of local groups who are members of this woodturning forum and who meet several times a year. So we meet, for example, in our area 6 times a year in a museum, and then we have where there is a workshop that we can use. And in addition, we have this year we have 2 private meetings in privately owned workshops. And it's not that formal. People can turn up to these meetings, but they are not members of a club, which makes buying equipment and stuff like that a bit more difficult, because you don't have the kind of the organization and stuff like that. But it's more kind of a loose connection. And then every 2 years, one of these groups, local groups of turners, offers to organize a symposium. So that is not as professional as the big symposiums in other places, but we normally have vendors and they bring demonstrators who show things, or who show wood turning, and who present the products of the vendors, of course. And also there is at least one place where demonstrators who are invited and paid for coming demonstrate wood turning, and we get about 1,000 people, sometimes more, 1,500 people visiting over 2 days. Yeah, 2.5 days. Friday, it starts Friday afternoon till Sunday afternoon.
One of the
Do most of those people come and stay in hotels, or do they just come in for the day because they live close enough? I don't.
Yeah, it's both. As you said, some people are staying privately with other wood turners they know in the area. Some people stay in hotels, bed and breakfast, holiday flats. You can rent stuff like that. And some people drive just for the day, or they just come for one day, drive there in the morning and leave in the afternoon. But Germany is much smaller than the United States, so driving to a place like that is easier if you have to drive maybe 2 hours or something like that.
I was going to say, you've got a huge population density in a very small area. So how long does it take to drive across Germany from one side to the other? Is it a day?
I guess around 20 hours or something like that. Depends on the car maybe and the traffic you meet, but yeah, you can do that. You can do that,
right?
Yeah, you can do that within a day maybe if you don't need sleep. But yeah.
But it's still a fairly. We're talking when somebody wants to drive 2 days just to get to the middle of the country, let alone to the other side of it. So it's like.
Yeah.
Anyway,
that makes a difference, of course. And when we meet in summer, for example, we will have to drive about 6-7 hours to get there from where I live. But we meet in between on the way, and then pick up people and go there together in several cars. So not everybody has to drive by himself or herself. So we organize that. And if it works well, we will have the meeting in another place, and I won't have to drive that far, maybe in 2 years then.
You know, one of the things that we keep talking about demonstrations, what I really miss is a wood turning buddy. Do you guys understand what that might be? Somebody you can say, come over and just watch how I'm doing stuff. See if I got something gone wrong that I shouldn't be, and I don't think about it until it smacks me in the jaw, you know. I don't live with a buddy within very reasonable time, but I don't need more demonstrations. I learned some things. I usually figure it's worth something if I learn one thing. and usually I do, but on a day-to-day basis, now I'm not a 40-year turner. I've been turning since I was a teenager, but not every year and with good skill. Only since I retired 5-6 years ago have I gotten serious about it. But still, there's somebody who's experienced, like Doug, who can say to me, Jim, that's a stupid way to do that. You're going to hurt yourself. So.
Yeah, I'm very
Our-
lucky in
our
that
club-
regard. I can drive to Doug's place or Angelo's place or Barry's place in a couple of minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, our club, Nittany Valley Woodturners, we have a dedicated mentor coordinator, and people were kind of reluctant to go to him and try to hook up with a mentor. So but we're looking at you guys have this open shop, and we're probably looking to go towards the open shop and maybe just drop the mentor position because people are just not utilizing it.
Well, how about the other side of that though? You do trainings, and I was going to ask you, how do those work? You've mentioned trainings a number of times.
Yeah, we're really big into training. We have an agreement with the Rivet and Discovery Space, which is a local maker space. And what they do is they promise that they will keep our lathes secure, and they will advertise the classes for us, and they will always mention that the Nittany Valley Woodturners are conducting the course. And part of our agreement is we're going to we split the proceeds that we get from the training curriculum with them. It's a 60-40 split, and we also get all paid for all the materials. And what they get is we get 2 sessions a month that we have to perform for the entire year. And that could include private lessons, and it could be just a course or 2 courses. The latest one we did bowl turning, and we taught 5 students. We have 8 lathes, but we only use 5 or 6 students usually, and we try to have one-on-one training for everybody. So we're able to get 5 or 6 trainers there when we're doing the entire thing. So it works out really well. We have a great agreement with the Rivet. They're very cooperative, but
Is that like an all-day? Is
Pardon
that
me?
like an all-day session or a half-day session, or what kind of thing do the people sign up for that?
Well, right now we offer pen turning. We have both wood and acrylic. The pen turning class is a 2-hour class. The acrylic one is 2.5 hours. We have ice cream scoops. We do pizza cutters. I think we're going to get into. We have bowl, and we have 3-legged bench. The 3-legged bench is 3-legged stool is it's a 2-session. We have 3 hours for 2 sessions, one week, and then the following week we have one.
And how much do they pay? What's the fee?
Oh, I don't know. Let me take I'm not really sure. Let me get back to you on that.
Okay.
I don't consider myself a beginning turner, but I still would like mentor, but I want them at my place, on my tools, on my lathe. That would be the most beneficial to me. I don't want to go to a strange setup. The learning becomes not as effective for me. I don't know if that's true or not for the rest of you guys, but it is for me. So
I'd agree with you, Jim. In fact, when people ask me if I would come and do something, or should they come over to my place, my first response is no. I want to go to your place so I can see you on your lathe and see the position, because there's so much about lathe work. Just if you don't have the lathe the right height to start with, you're dead in the water, and I can't demonstrate that on my lathe. So really, you need to learn on your own lathe if you can. So anyway, but not everybody can do that.
I take a different approach because I live in a place with a lot of traffic. It takes a while to go anywhere, and I tend to teach short lessons. If it's a new beginner turner, I try to encourage them. I have a 3-hour minimum, and that's frequently what people will have. and I do it in my shop because I want them to see, they can bring their tools, but they can see my setup, how I organize, how I store things. I know everything's going to work. The lathe will work. The grinder will work. I've got CBN wheels. They can see all of that. If you go to someone else's shop that's brand new, you may not have a ability to sharpen their tools. So, you know, I take a little different view.
Mike, you're absolutely right though, for a beginner. I mean, they haven't done enough to know how a shop should be. But I'm talking about myself. I've been turning every day for the last 5 years in my own shop. So
yeah, I can see where your situation would be a little different. And if I had an ongoing teaching relationship with somebody, I would certainly be willing to go to their shop, you know, after the basics were taken care of.
Yep.
Anybody else?
John, to get back to you on your question about the cost, I just looked it up. It's $40 for a pen turning class for 2 hours, and it's $45 for the scoop class that we're going to do at the end of the month. So, and we split that fee. So we have about, we'll have 10 students between the two classes. So it's a little bit of an income and for the club too. So it really helps.
And it's club members who are the teachers in this.
Yeah, the club members are the teachers, and they're.
How do you qualify them? How do you vet somebody and say, well, you're a good teacher, you can do this?
They just show up. I mean, some people are very interested, and we have the same people pretty much every time. But at the club meetings, I always encourage somebody to come out. Hey, if you just want to learn how to turn a pen, just come and watch, or you know, maybe you can help a little bit or give somebody some advice. But we do have to have all the certificates for child safety things too. So we need all those. But
you have to make sure the trainers are fully up to speed on safety and all of that stuff.
yeah, our classes, the first thing we begin with in every class, no matter what the skill level is, we have a safety class for about 15 minutes, and then we do parts of the lathe. And safety is always like the main concern. And we cover things from no open-toed shoes to, you know, safety glasses and short sleeve shirts and no rings, and don't try to catch a falling tool. You know, we try to go over all that thing, and we listen to the trainer, and if they forget something, everybody chimes in and make sure that all those points are covered.
See, I think that's the thing that's missing from our open shops is we haven't yet evolved to where we have any systematic instruction like that. And I think we could use it. I think that would help us a lot.
Well, being affiliated with the Rivet, I think they demanded that we have a curriculum, or they didn't demand it, but they requested we have a curriculum so they could publish that. And so we thought about it long and hard, and we have a couple of really intense people who are dedicated to doing the training, and that really helps a lot too. Somebody who really wants to do it.
I think AAW has some pretty good documentation on this as well. Some pretty good stuff for basic classes. There's a lot of stuff buried way down on their website.
Yeah, they have terrific references for that.
One of the things you pointed out though is how do you become qualified as a trainer? Because I actually have absolutely no qualifications as a trainer whatsoever in wood turning. And if you take a look at some of the videos you see, not Mike's of course, but some of the videos you see on the YouTube, there are some people out there that claim themselves as trainers that I wouldn't go close to with a 10-foot pole, you know, because of the danger they're doing stuff with. So we don't really have any, well, unless you guys know of, so we don't have a formal way of saying this guy is qualified as that guy is qualified, other than have a bunch of people in the lab say, hey, or the club say, go talk to him or something like that. You know what I'm saying?
That's kind of all we have. And I watch you turn. You do stuff that I consider highly risky, but you know what you're doing. So, but there's things I would never do that you do. So there you go.
That's my point. Is I do things that are highly risky because I don't know any better sometimes.
Well, we struggled out when we started doing the training too, but what we discovered is the people who are experts on, let's say, a skew, they'll come out and they'll really be helpful, and they're willing to share that. They're always willing to share that information. I think wood turners, that's a big thing with wood turners. We're all willing to share our information, and we love what we do, and we just want everybody to do it too.
What about you, Gerald? How do you guys do it?
Well, the Western Maryland Works, which is our makerspace coordination, there are 3 of us from the Quad State Bodgers that have participated in teaching turning, and all 3 of us happen to be educators. So, and in some form of manipulative skills. So we're all well qualified. The neat thing is that since we really are working for the makerspace, we're on salary from them. So they pay us to do the class. And the classes cost generally about what Ken was saying, about, I think it's $35, $32, something like that for the class. And we supply the materials, we go through the safety, just like everyone else has mentioned. It's really concerning that people operate the equipment safely. And we don't do anything the size that Doug would do on his large platters. We're keeping things down to smaller products, pens, miscellaneous items.
You do pens and scoops and things? What kind of thing? What kind of project?
We haven't done the anything but pens, bottle stoppers, a small bud vase,
Ornaments.
a couple other small things, just enough to introduce the people into turning. And with our hope was that it would increase our membership in our club.
Has it?
No.
It has for us. In the last year, I was just looking this up. We got 5 new members, and they all came from training classes, which was pretty good.
We always promote it, and
people come to the Saturday open shop and they say, "Oh, I like this," and they join the club. We've had a few of those.
We've had several new club members over the years that come to our monthly hands-on workshop and join. That's been a big growth engine for our club.
Well, we've had a number of people show interest, but they never show for the meetings.
Well, there's always that. Anybody we haven't heard from here who'd like to join this discussion? I see a question in the
I'd like
chat.
to offer a brief overview of my experience as a new member, a new turner, all at the same time. My introduction to turning came from my son, not anybody in this club. And initially, when I was in these meetings with you guys who are extremely knowledgeable, I found that I didn't know enough. I thought I didn't know enough to be with this group because you guys were way over my head all the time. But it was just through sitting through meetings that I didn't understand for, I don't know, 6 months or so, that I began to really enjoy it. So if it gets too technical, which I don't know how you measure that, but if it gets too technical or too involved, then as a new turner, I became a little bit disinterested, but by sticking it out, I became more interested, if that helps.
Sure it does. And going back to the question about who's a trainer, most of the projects are just small projects, pens, scoops.
You're not
those
gonna
things.
you're
Just
not gonna teach them to turn a natural edge bowl, for example.
that may come down in a couple of years, but we would probably require a certain level of experience with wood turning before we do that. We'd have to look into that.
We've used not natural edge bowls, but small, because we're using mini lathes, 10-inch bowls. They've worked out real well.
Lidded boxes, did anybody do that?
No, we've not done any wooded boxes yet. How about you, Gerald?
Mark offered a class in lidded boxes, and we didn't have enough enrollment to run the class.
Huh, okay. Well,
Well,
that
Again,
tells
the
me-
Over here, we have 3 turners, and we do anything from total beginners, just learning how to rough down beads and coves, and then from there we progress to making egg cups and eggs. And whilst the other guy is doing the intermediates and the more experienced turners doing natural edge bowls, hollowing, and so forth. And the third turner is always showing the next month's competition piece. So it can be anything from a secret lidded box to natural edge. And it is very difficult at the moment because we have 3 turners who are qualified, or the best qualified to do the work, but we're struggling to get somebody else to come along and take over from us. But in normal, we make pens in both acrylic, wood, and we've done more than that. And a few years ago, I was actually teaching at Chichester College, where we had 8 lathes and 8 students, just myself. And we turned anything from egg cups to goblets, 3-legged stools. And then as we progressed, we went into involuted turning. So over here, we got quite a good repertoire between the 3 turners on what we can show and do.
How big is your club, Don?
Our club before COVID was just on 100, but since COVID, it's down to about 60.
And how close is how far would you have to drive to visit another club?
25 miles to Southampton and about the same way the other way. But outside of that, you've got to go further into Kent, Surrey, down into Devon. So
that's about the same as we are here in Lancaster. That's actually, we can drive to Harrisburg in 40 minutes and about an hour to Baltimore and into Delaware. So we can reach 5 or 6, and up to Nittany Valley would be about an hour, I guess. So, you know, we can get to 5 or 6 clubs with an hour drive too.
Yeah. Most of our club members, of course, are within a 20-mile radius of the club.
Yep.
Yeah.
Even closer, of course. I'm only 5 minutes away.
One
That's
of the
what we do over here, just to let you know what goes on over here. And that's what's going to happen on this coming Saturday.
One of the things you guys are sort of glossing over is, or not glossing over, but alluding to, is it's really a lot more difficult setting up a training session where you're putting a lot of different people with different skill levels into one subject and trying to do a training. I personally prefer just to do one-on-one, because that way I can directly answer questions that the person has, as opposed to doing the other way around. I'm really, I've spent enough time throughout my years trying to train people who aren't interested in the subject in industrial basis that I'm tired of answering or trying to create questions for people who need to be trained but aren't willing to be trained, if you know what I mean. It's a different subject.
Well, we have 5 or 6 students and we have 5 or 6 trainers. So it really does amount to one-on-one training. Especially, we were very intense whenever it came to the bowl training because of the bowl gouge itself. But
yeah.
So we really, it's really an offer of one-on-one training. Doesn't always happen, but most of the time we're good with that.
I would think that to be the most effective way is one student, one teacher, spend 2 hours. You could really cover a hell of a lot of ground.
Yeah, well, there's the lead trainer will go over the whole process on a lathe and just actually show how to make, like, say, a pen blank. And then we kind of break up and go, you usually do one-on-one, but we rotate because everybody has a little different opinion on how to hold the tool and maybe they can help a little different way. So we do rotate around, or if we hear a noise, a strange noise, we all go running.
You raise an interesting point there, Ken, about rotating around and everybody has something different. That's one of the things that I'm very careful in my workshop. I'm blessed to have some one or two really good assistants, but the importance is they know they're gonna do it pretty much the same way I am because they're skilled wood turners. The problem I've seen is you'll get somebody that's coming in to volunteer that will have a completely unorthodox or a different approach, and you've got one person telling somebody one thing, they go away, the person has a problem, someone else comes in and shows them something completely different, and it just has their head spinning.
Yeah, I don't think it's a completely different for us mainly. I think comes in and said, okay, well, I like to sand a little bit faster than this person does, but you do it the way you like to do it. What we're recommending, you do it on a slow speed. So, but some people like to sand a little bit faster. It's fine. And again, the projects are small. There really isn't that much difference in what we're doing.
I've never tried the multiple trainer approach. To me, that does sound a little scary. What I always find interesting or difficult is to find that fine medium where you're not on top of the person all the time and you give them enough time to really learn the skill rather than staring there and telling them what they're doing wrong. And I think that's really important, particularly with beginners, that you have some confidence in them and you give them where they get the self-confidence to actually do it themselves. I like two students at a time. To me is perfect. I think more is when it starts getting complicated.
I think it's amazing. The students will, if let's say I'm talking to one student, a student on either side will listen to what I'm saying, and then another person comes in, they'll listen to everything. So they're just, they're in there to learn, and they want to suck up as much information as they can.
I have a fella comes to my shop who's been learning how to turn pens, or rather tops. He's turned a bunch of tops. He wanted to make a whole bunch of little tops. And so I got him started and turned him loose. And then he said, after about an hour and a half, he said, I'm starting to realize that I'm better off to put pressure on holding the tool down on the tool rest, not leaning into the work. Yes, he figured it out by himself. That's the real victory.
One of the things that I'm interested, I have two grandkids I'm about ready to introduce to the lathe if I can get their parents to agree. Do you guys have a recommendation? I know a number of you've taught your grandkids or little kids how to start.
Tops.
Okay.
Make tops and let them color them with markers or colored pencils. They love that.
Okay. Is that a good skill builder?
You hold a colored marker up to a piece of wood that's spinning around and watch the color develop on it. The kids can't resist that, and they can make a top with all they need is a parting tool and a spindle gouge.
If it's a girl, Peggy people, just as simple, and they get to decorate them. My granddaughters both love those.
What was it?
Peggy people. It's basically, it's a little cylinder with a knob on the end of it. Maybe it doesn't even have to be a knob. It's more of just a rounded cylinder with a rounded end on it.
These guys here, guys like this, these are the old Fisher Price toys.
Yep. Well, the question is, you want them to learn a skill. So what tools do you start them with? And
parting tool and a gouge. Parting tool and the spindle gouge.
Okay. You're not going to start them on a bowl gouge, but.
Jim?
Yeah.
My thoughts, and I've talked to people about this. If you would trust a kid with a sharp knife, they can handle a turning tool.
I find the 8 years old, if they're about 8 years old and they want to do it, they can do it. It's been
one's 8 and one's 10. So it's the parents that are very scared of it. Yeah, I have a hard
Make
time
sure,
with
make sure their hair's tied back. That's the main.
that. Yeah,
If you look, there are some training documents from the AW for beginners, and they actually have some discussion of children, but
Yeah.
they recommend 3 tools. They recommend starting with a roughing gouge, a spindle gouge, and a parting tool. And that's really a good introduction to the lathe with 3 tools.
I agree completely. On that note, it's 11 o'clock. We've just had an hour. We didn't actually show any wood turning, which is, I think, the first time we've ever done that. But I found this to be a very informative and wide-ranging discussion, very helpful to me in thinking about stuff for our club and how to deal with symposia and teaching events. So thank you all for your participation. And next week we'll get back to wood turning.
Right. Goodbye, everyone.
Thank you, John.
See you next
Take
week.
care, everybody. Yep.
see y'all.
Keep turning.
Wood shop. Thank God for wood.